Good morning. Thank you. At West Plains High School, we have many values. One of them is gratitude, and we would like to express our gratitude for the veterans that are here today. At this time, would any members of our faculty and staff who are veterans please stand? I have a couple special guests. I was introduced to a gentleman this morning. He came all the way here from Blytheville, Arkansas, and he's going to have his story aired on the AETN network today, I believe at 2 p.m., which is part of the PBS channel. And his name is Anthony Smith, and he survived a rocket attack overseas. So, Anthony, could you just stand up real quick for everybody? And I've got one more special guest, and this person is really special to me. Those of you that don't know, I lost my mother when I was young, and came to Missouri and found a new family, and my mom that I've had for the last 30 years is here today. And she was married to a veteran who was like my dad. Annie Potts is here, and she's sitting behind me if she can stand up. We have one student this year at West Plains who has enlisted in the military. Hannah Moncrief, if you're in here, would you please stand and come down and sit with the veterans? Thank you. If you would all please rise for the presentation of the colors by the West Plains American Legion Color Guard. Please remain standing for the Star-Spangled Banner as performed by the West Plains High School Choir under the direction of Kelly Dame. The banner will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Student Body President Jackie Mayo.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. At this time, I would like to introduce the Zizzer Pride Band under the direction of Rocky Long, who will perform the marches of the armed forces. I will announce the hymns as they come. Veterans, please stand when your march is called. The Marine Corps hymn. Army hymn. The Coast Guard. The Air Force. The Navy hymn. Sarah Gill will now narrate our slideshow to honor veterans.
They were known as the Greatest Generation. They participated in a war which spanned the globe and fought to protect free people all over the world. From the beaches of France to the African desert to the islands of the Pacific, World War II was a most costly conflict, touching the lives of almost every American family. Would all World War II veterans please stand? It was known as the Forgotten War, fought from 1950 to 1953 to stop communist aggression on the Korean Peninsula. During the Korean War, over 44,000 were killed or listed as missing in action. The war was labeled a police action. However, the loss of U.S. servicemen who fought bravely point out how costly a war it was. Today, U.S. soldiers defend the 38th parallel, a sign that peace was never signed. Would all Korean War veterans please stand? The Vietnam War was fought by the United States from 1965 to 1973. Over 58,000 names of American service men and women killed in action are written on the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. The men who lived through their service in Vietnam returned home to a country that was divided by the war. There were no parades or celebrations for these heroes. Would all Vietnam vets please stand? Operation Desert Storm was fought from August 1990 to February 1991. Over 290 Americans lost their lives during this conflict. Many more returned home to become ill from exposure to various chemicals which were present on the battlefield. These brave soldiers fought to free Kuwait from the oppressive Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. Would all Desert Storm veterans please stand? In 2003, the United States Army returned to the Iraqi desert and Iraqi freedom. Only in the past few years have hostilities ceased. These brave Americans fought to throw out the dangerous and oppressive dictator Saddam Hussein. The mission was accomplished, but at a cost of over 4,000 U.S. soldiers. Would veterans of Operation Iraqi Freedom please stand? In 2001, in response to the despicable attacks of 9/11, the United States launched the Afghanistan War, which continues today. So far, over 2,200 American service men and women have lost their lives protecting our freedom in the far-off land of Afghanistan. Would all veterans of the war in Afghanistan please stand? Many other American service men and women have fought in smaller but no less dangerous or compelling in our history. These have names like Grenada, Panama, and Lebanon. Many other veterans have served in harm's way around the world as peacekeepers. Would those veterans please stand? At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Danny Brown for a Prisoners of War Missing in Action ceremony.
Thank you. Each year that we do this service, we honor our POWs and MIAs. That's missing in action. POW is prisoners of war. I know several of you that are probably juniors and seniors have already seen this, but the freshmen coming in haven't. And this is a tradition that the Army does, usually at any of their meals, their dining ins, but we always honor our POWs and MIAs. As you entered the gym today, you may have noticed a table raised to call your attention to its purpose. That's the one here in front of me. It is reserved to honor our missing loved ones. The table before you is a place of honor. It is set for one. The tail is our way of symbolizing the fact that members of our profession of arms are missing from our midst. They are commonly called POWs or MIAs. We call them brothers and sisters. They are unable to be with us today, so we remember them. The table is set for one. It is small, symbolizing the frailty of the prisoner alone against his oppressors. Remember. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. Remember. The single red rose displayed in a vase reminds the families and loved ones of our comrades in arms who keep the faith awaiting their return. Remember. The yellow ribbon tied so prominently on the vase is reminiscent of the yellow ribbon worn upon the lapels and breasts of thousands who bear witness to their unyielding determination to demand a proper accounting of our missing. Remember. A slice of lemon is on the plate to remind us of the bitter fate. Remember. The Bible represents the strength gained through faith in our country, founded as one nation under God to sustain those lost from our midst. Remember. There is salt upon the plate, symbolic of the family's tears as they wait. Remember. The glass is inverted. It cannot toast with us today. Remember. The chair is empty. They are not here. They're missing. Remember. Remember all who served with them and called them comrades. Remember until the day they come home. Remember. Thank you.
I have the great honor of announcing the subject of today's video, a man who is a living legend. He left his home in the Missouri Ozarks and joined the United States Army. He crossed the Atlantic Ocean and participated in the greatest amphibious landing in the history of mankind, D-Day. Tommy McDonnell went ashore on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944, and faced the German Army ready to push him and the other members of the 1st Infantry Division back into the sea. Dr. McDonnell fought at the Battle of the Bulge. He helped open the gates at Dachau and Bergen-Belsen death camps. He's a true hero, as a member of the group known as the Greatest Generation. After the war, he came home and helped to make his country and state a better place. He earned Bachelor of Science degrees from University of Missouri and University of New York. He earned his medical degree from University of Indiana, where he met his wife of 63 years. He and his wife had 8 children, 16 grandchildren, and 17 great-grandchildren. He has served 4 terms as a state representative from Webster County. He has delivered 4,582 babies. He would have liked to have been here today, but unfortunately, pending weather prevented that. This is his story.
Tommy fought at Omaha Beach, Bloody Omaha, where the famous scene in Saving Private Ryan captured the epic bloodshed, the fear, the noise, and the violence of that morning.
Sir, I'm staying!
I want my boys to see where it all happened. The 4 boys are going and 2 grandsons.
Tommy's grandson, Matt, is a veteran as well, having served in the Iraq War.
It's important for me to be with him on that beach because I want that perspective that he had.
They were ordinary young men who saw the worst of war and acted with extraordinary courage and grace. Proud members of the group appropriately named the Greatest Generation.
They went through the Depression. They fought the war and saved the world. They came home and began to address a lot of the social ills that had existed. They weren't perfect by any means, but as a group, I believe it's the Greatest Generation.
Joe was one of 1.5 million Americans who flooded into Great Britain. During months of training and waiting, they formed a tight brotherhood. Sharpshooter Tommy McDonnell, a self-described country boy from the Ozarks, roomed with his buddy Sam DiPaolo.
Sam DiPaolo was my roommate in England, very close friend, a boy from the New Orleans area.
These were friends you could count on, a true band of brothers. This was it. They were going to Normandy, a 50-mile stretch of coastline, 5 landing beaches codenamed Sword, Juno, Gold, Omaha, and Utah. 156,000 men would drop from the skies and wade in from the sea. At stake was the liberation of France, occupied for 4 long years by Nazi Germany. It was a big risk, it would be tough going, and no one knew that better than the Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower. Rick Atkinson is a Pulitzer Prize-winning World War II historian.
He's smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day. He's got ringing in one ear. He's bothered by headaches. He's under amazing stress.
On June 5th, Eisenhower met with his staff and spoke 3 simple words. Okay, let's go.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you.
June 5th, 1944, 11 p.m. At dozens of airfields across Great Britain, pilots revved their engines in the dark of night and took off for the French coastline.
Londoners were awakened in the early hours of this morning by the roar of planes, the largest force of bombers and fighters ever to take the air.
Men are terrified. Men are praying. This is the most intense moment of your life.
The GIs were all young men who had just matured very quickly in the space of a day.
There are no boys there on June 6th. I don't care how old you are. To be able to do what they did requires manhood of the first order.
And there was still a long way to go. The fighting on D-Day had only just begun. As dawn approached on June 6th, the pivotal part of the D-Day invasion began. Allied forces descended on the coastline by air and by sea. Their mission was to clear a path for soldiers to storm the beaches of Normandy.
London radio has just issued a warning from the Supreme Allied Commander advising the French people to leave the entire coastline of France.
The assault at Utah was progressing, but about 20 miles down the coast, sharpshooter Tommy McDonnell and thousands of other troops at Omaha Beach were in trouble.
This was your introduction to the German armaments fired at you in anger. And as you approached the coast, it just must have been a hellacious noise.
It was worse than that. When we were making a fast run for the beach, one combat engineer was just crying for us to pick him up. The machine gun bullets were spotting the water around him, and the Navy captain just kept going right on. Oof. I felt so sorry for him.
Then, just as his landing craft approached the beach, Tommy felt an explosion.
We'd hit a teller mine, which blew out part of the bottom of the boat. Water could splash in. It was cold. The ramp was dropped. The machine guns opened up and killed the 2 sailors that dropped the ramp.
It is a scythe of fire coming across the beach. Entire platoons destroyed. It's a horrible, horrible thing.
Tommy rolled onto the beach in a U.S. Army half-track, propelled in the rear by treads. Just then, the Germans unleashed their heavy artillery. He watched in horror as his best friend Sam DiPaolo's half-track took a direct hit and went up in flames.
For years, I could hear him calling for me to get him out of that fire. And I was firing my machine gun. I got off 2,600 rounds before I ran out of ammunition. And then Sergeant Duke said, "We're now infantry. And McDonnell, you're the sharpshooter."
Tommy raced to a 4-foot-high stone ledge for safety, but not fast enough. He'd been hit. Shrapnel from a mortar pierced his hip.
How does it feel to get hit, first of all?
It was red hot. It was like somebody hit me with a hot poker. But it didn't hurt.
Oh, come on.
Well, it might hurt a little bit. But I could still move. I could crawl.
Tommy says there were 3 sharpshooters in his unit starting out, but now he was the only one still able to fight. He knew he would have to take things into his own hands. Not a day goes by that Tommy McDonald doesn't think of what he saw and heard and what he survived on that day. Bad knees and old wounds make it tough to walk, but he's determined to show his family what he faced on D-Day. Tommy's grandson, Matt.
When I thought about my granddad and what he did during the war, the biggest question that came to my mind is how did he do it? How did he get through that experience?
On Omaha Beach, a few hours after the invasion started, it was still a bloodbath. Tommy was wounded, but he kept going. He crawled up the bluff, straight into enemy fire.
You learn to recognize the cross pattern of the machine gun and pick a time when it wasn't firing.
And you try to jump the pause. You try to anticipate when the next pause is coming and leave right as it starts.
That's exactly right. It didn't take me long to know when to move, especially when the soldier next to me, as close as you are, was hit in the head and killed.
Tommy dove for the safest place he could find and belly flopped into a latrine where German soldiers had left some reading material behind.
Under this eye was Das Reich. Under this eye was a German song sheet.
Seeing that German typeface on a piece of paper really made it real for you.
You're so right.
Tommy left the latrine and crawled toward an observation post. He took aim on a periscope the Germans were using to target Americans.
At 150 yards, it was an easy target. I squeezed off one round.
Tommy hit and destroyed the periscope.
D-Day will stand in history as one of the greatest military feats of all time.
D-Day was a victory, but it came at an enormous price. Almost 2,500 U.S. soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice on that one day.
In the long history of war, there's never been anything like D-Day. There has never been an invasion like that involves so many men, so many armaments, in which the stakes were so high.
Tommy, Joe, Gully, and Tom fought through the rest of the war. They also witnessed the fall of Nazi Europe. Then they came home and restarted their lives. But of course, they had all changed. Tommy turned down another tour of duty. He decided he had enough.
I said, I've done all the killing I'm going to do. I'm going to go to medical school, become a doctor, and start saving lives instead of taking them.
Tommy became Dr. Tommy back home, an obstetrician who delivered nearly 5,000 babies in his career and had 8 of his own with his late wife Ann. But the war stayed with him. He had nightmares, which, like other World War II vets, he kept to himself.
Why did they come back and almost to a man not talk about it?
One of my friends that I wrote about had the best line, I thought. He fought all the way across the Pacific, saw his brother die on a beach, and said, if I walked into a bar and they were talking about combat, they had not been there, and I walked out. And I think that was probably the unspoken code, if you will, of anybody who served in the war.
For Tommy McDonald, his sons and grandsons, Omaha Beach was the first stop.
Sam DiPaolo.
It was here that Tommy's D-Day stories seemed to come to life. The German observation post, the bunkers, the commanding views that the German gunners had of the beach.
You see how they're built?
Oh, yeah.
For Tommy's grandson, Matt, an Iraq War veteran, finally seeing the lay of the land brought it all into sharper focus.
I felt like I really needed to see this. I mean, to put it all into perspective, and it really has changed my perspective of what my granddad went through.
By far the toughest part for Tommy is the American cemetery, where his brothers in arms are buried. It's the first time he's been able to bring himself to see it.
I can't say that It was the happiest thing I've ever done. In fact, it was depressing, but it was gratifying to know that the men that I knew were being well taken care of.
They are. 10,000 of them. 10,000 of them. They are. More than anything, Tommy McDonald wanted his boys to see this place and remember what happened here. His grandson, Cole Alexander, says that mission was accomplished.
We lost my grandma recently, and it just has really made me, and I think all my family, think about how he's not going to be here much longer. And I wanted to see this, I really needed to, and it was really special.
Do you feel, Doctor, that you can go back to the United States and allow yourself to rest a little bit? You made it to the 70th anniversary of what you achieved when you were a very young man on this very sand.
Just down the hill.
This feels like hallowed ground, doesn't it?
Yes, it really does.
And hopefully there will never be a cause this great and a war this awful.
We pray that that will be so.
About 5 o'clock yesterday, Dr. Tommy called me, and he was pretty down. He wanted to be here very badly. It's about 95 miles to his home, and he's 96, so doesn't travel real well anymore. And with this winter weather, he said, I have to reluctantly back out. But I do appreciate being able to talk to him. He wanted me to tell you that he thought that you need to appreciate being an American and never forget the sacrifices that others made so you can have so many opportunities. He told me yesterday that not a day goes by that he does not think about his experiences in World War II and the fact that he was wounded 3 times. He also thinks you, the students, are wonderful people. And he believes that our nation is in good hands because of you, our students. Now I'd like to introduce Danny again, who's going to introduce some other special guests.
Thanks, Jack. I got to have this down a little lower. He's taller than I am. I just wanted to say to all the students here, each year you're very well behaved, and we really appreciate that. But I want you to look down here on the floor. These are the guys that have enabled you to have the freedoms you have today, to be able to go where you want to go, to be able to just do anything you want to do. They have kept the freedom of this country. And we forget that sometimes. We forget about we're Americans. We have short memories, okay? And they've the one that's fought so you can have all the liberties that you have now. And those liberties are going to school and being free. And I just was sitting up here looking at all of them, and I thought, they're the reason that we're free today. But also, I'd like to, one thing we haven't ever done, and I got to thinking about it, was if you are a Purple Heart recipient, can you stand up, please? Or wave your hand or whatever. Any Purple Heart recipients? Okay. Thank you very much. If you don't know what a Purple Heart recipient is, that means these guys were wounded and received a Purple Heart. That was a honor and a medal that actually George Washington brought about. So anyway, without further ado, I just wanted to introduce a couple of our oldest World War II vets. And it was, we were sitting up here talking, and Jack McNevin here behind me is one of them, but he's saying, well, I think Bob Anders is a little older than I am. And Bob is sitting right over here. Bob, would you raise your cane or your hand? I know you can't stand up very well. Bob, aren't you 98? Are you 98, Bob? Yes, he's 98 years old. Go ahead. Jack back here, Jack's 96, aren't you, Jack? 95. And Joe Spears right over here. Joe, are you 92? 94, okay? So 98, 95, and 94. Let's all give them a hand. And I'm sorry, I missed one. Our own John Edgeler, who lives right here in West Plains. He was a commander of the 1138th MP Company for about 10 years, and he's retired out of the military. How old are you, John? 92. He's 92, so... We really appreciate you guys being here because at that age, I know it's kind of tough to get around sometimes, but again, we have a very good representation. And speaking of age, if you don't know it, at the 11th day, the 11th hour, the 11th minute, 100 years ago today, the World War I armistice was signed and that war ended. So it was 100 years ago today. So I'll turn it back over to Jack.
We will now have a performance of "O America" by the West Plains High School Choir seniors under the direction of Kelly Dame.
You
We have neglected to introduce one more World War II vet. We need to start doing a check-in station at the breakfast, I guess, and start, then we'll know everyone that's here. But Hubert Reisner is 92. He is a World War II vet. Where is he at? Could he please stand for me? Thank you. Gold Star families are a group of families whose sons and daughters or husbands or wives have served and died in the line of duty in the armed forces for the United States or its allies. Do we have any Gold Star family members here today? If they would please stand. Thank you. We will now have a performance of America by the West Plains High School Choir under the direction of Kelly Dame, and then we will have the 11 Chimes reading by Justin Cotter.
At 5 o'clock in the morning, on the 11th day of November, 1918, delegates from Germany, France, Great Britain, and the United States sat in a railroad car in the Argonne Forest in France. In that modest car, they signed a ceasefire agreement, an armistice, to end World War I, and thus laid the foundation upon which Veterans Day is based. In 1919, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed November 11th to be Armistice Day. The same day has been adjusted many times in the past in order to accommodate the more recent conflicts of our age. It was upgraded in 1938 to a national holiday by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In 1954, Congress changed the name to Veterans Day. All of these adjustments were made with the same goal in mind. There is a duty for all Americans to recognize the courage demonstrated and sacrifices made by the women and men in the armed forces, and express a sincere hope that those heroes who have died for our freedom would not be forgotten. It is humbling to think that just in the past century, over 600,000 distinguished members of the American Armed Forces have made the ultimate sacrifice, being killed in wartime action, including over 400,000 in World War II, so that each one of us could love, laugh, and enjoy freedom of religion without fear of consequences. Freedom is never free. On that early November morning, the delegates in the humble railroad car agreed that in 6 hours, all guns should fall silent. In effect, they did something all mankind has wanted to do for centuries: stop the killing and end the war. These 11 chimes signify that at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the fighting did stop. They honor those who served, fought, and died for our country.
You all about ready outside? We're coming to you in just a second. Thank you, Philip Grisham. Thank you, Justin Cotter. Students and guests, at this time, if you would, to turn your attention to the large screens at the end of the gym for an unveiling of benches to the Veterans Monument that we have outside.
Thank you. And I have here at the monument with me Ron Evans, Danny Brown, Jack McNevin, John Edgeler, and Bob Lang. And Bob is going to say a few words to dedicate it, and then these guys are going to cut the ribbon on the benches.
Thank you very much. The monument that you have here, I have mentioned to a lot of people that I know that are not from this area, and I think it's very, very representative of the veterans who fought for all your lives that are in there watching this. And all the veterans enjoy and really, really appreciate everything that you people have done for us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
inside. Thank you. Oh, taps. We're playing taps. Taps.
Oh, you don't need the mic.
Okay. 96 to 16. Can you get the golf cart back up here, please? Yes, sir.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to each and every one of you that have served our country, and for my students that are planning to serve. Thank you very much. I appreciate your service. My Uncle Cecil died at the Battle of the Bulge. I never got to meet that man, but everything I've ever heard about him was nothing but wonderful. So I just have like a little bit of a personal stake in this. I just got a new son-in-law who also fought in Afghanistan. So it makes it even more real when it's part of your physical family and not just your American family. Our students and our community are 100% behind our veterans, and through sales, through Coach Airy and the football team, and a few weeks ago we had a dinner for our veterans at the football field, and t-shirts were sold. And in the last 2 weeks, students in social studies classes have just literally taken money out of their pockets and put it in jars. And so at this time, I would like Mr. Danny to come and accept a check for $3,700 to our area local veterans. And just to give you a little bit more information, in the last 3 years, our first year doing this was 2 years ago. We donated $1,300. Last year, right at $6,000. So this $3,700 makes a total of $10,000 our community has given to our local vets in the last 3 years. So give yourselves a big round of applause.
Thank you. Just take a minute to thank a few people. We couldn't do these videos without Mr. Heidi. Couldn't do this program without these wonderful people. Sarah Gill, Justin Cotter, Jackie Mayo, Lena Yates, the entire West Plains Student Council, Reagan Fox, Jonathan Huffstedler, and then I'll tell you what, who's kind of an unsung heroes around here are our custodians who helped me set up the gym, and our cooks that help prepare everything. So thank them. Thanks to Kelly Dame and the Zizzer Choir, wonderful as always, and the Zizzer Pride Band with Rocky Long and Melody Alford. Super job. Thanks to Danny Brown. And most of all, thank you to all you vets and your families for being here. We couldn't do this without you, so thank you so much for being here. And the last thing people I'm going to thank are you students. Just wonderful, super job today. You showed everybody here what real Zizzer Pride is, so congratulations to the students. Okay, this concludes our program. Vets, thank you again for being here. We will let you guys exit. And I know you got a parade to go to, or probably have to go get a coat on and some gloves. So this is your day. Hope you enjoy it. Students, stay seated.